Now, as we know, you don't need me to tell you that this hobby is full of surprises. But if I was to close my eyes and imagine my idyllic Speedmaster, that I didn't even know a configuration like this could have ever existed, well, in the famous words of Margin Call, all I can say,
this is it! I'm telling you, this is it!
A few weeks ago, I put a hands-on review video up on the channel about why I chose a Breitling 765 over an Omega Speedmaster. I'll link the video in the corner. It's a good watch. I really enjoyed putting it together. And in that video, I go to lengths to explain my ideal vision of a Speedmaster. A CK2998 with a lollipop seconds hand. And at the time when I recorded the video, the watch we're talking about today, it did not exist. But if it had, my decision-making process would have been a bit different. I would think it's fair to say. Now, since Omega gave us a sneak peek about the watch that they were going to deliver, as well as a date when it would arrive, it gave me a few days beforehand to predict what we would see. And I had a gut feeling that this new FOIS would arrive in one of two ways. First, and most likely, I thought, a near identical reproduction of the original CK2998. Hands down my favorite variant of the Speedmaster. And it would be complete with the applied classic Omega logo with a great flat link bracelet, and of course the now famed caliber 321 movement, just like the original. This would be yet another premium option for us to pursue instead of the transitional Ed White. We'll be paying big bucks for a more artisanal product. Or the second option, the less likely option, a return of the first Omega in space to play as a direct opposite, next to the now immensely popular 3861 Professional. Something that has touches of that older character with straight lugs, applied logo, at a more affordable price point. That's not saying much, but you know what I mean. And so I think when I look back and consider the Ed White, consider the 3861, Omega has in fact delivered on both of these. An update that they're calling the second generation first Omega in space, an anniversary watch, a part of their anniversary collection. And for someone like me, the great surprise is that it is better than I could have ever imagined. Going so far to opt to use an extremely rare prototype grey-blue dial, and it's a watch that we can all get our hands on. Now, what makes the first Omega in space quite a fascinating piece is that it was one of the first watches that Omega brought back as a reissue. They claimed it was the reissue. Yes, there were many variations and mishmashes beforehand, like the professional case with the broad arrow, quite a special Speedmaster. And I do believe that the FOIS ushered in a new era for the reissue category. And as we can see, as time went on, 2015, 2017, 2019, all of these years we started seeing these reincarnations, reimaginings of the original properties. Now, the issue with the first generation FOIS is that there were many aspects of the watch that were incorrect. The applied logo was wrong. The Omega name was wrong. There wasn't a dot over 90. I don't believe there was a step dial. The sapphire crystal was boxed, so you had this large milky ring around the dial. The crown on the piece was incorrect for the time period. It did not come fitted with a flat link bracelet. And there was some discrepancy about the choices of hands used on the chronograph sub-registers. We will then see a few years later, around 2017, where a model like the 2915 Omega Trilogy Speedmaster was quite a literal recreation of the original. The only thing that was lacking, of course, was the 321 movement that would arrive later. But this piece was a far clearer and historically correct example of what the original 57 Speedmaster would look like. And not too long afterwards, so we arrive at the 2998. Now, this era of Speedmaster, it has got to be the most underrated of the family. I'm not just saying that to be edgy or because it's one of my favorites, this is all true. But standing next to the later generation Lyre-style cases, this machine doesn't exude the same level of character, we could say, and it never will. You know, it has more gravitas, it's a lot more solemn, it's more serious in its design. But as we know with all things in life, it's the details that count. Everyone talks about how the 145 Ed White Speedmaster is that transitional watch in this family. And I would agree, because we're moving to the professional case soon after. But the 2998 is the in-between. It's the transitional out of the more classically styled 50s and into the early 60s. In here we see a lot more charisma, we see a lot more experimentation, not a full understanding of what this watch would eventually turn into. But at the same time, it is incredibly charming. So I believe that this anniversary piece, it's looking at 1964 as its origin, moving to 2024, its 60th anniversary. And there is no better word for it. The specifications of this piece, they are astounding. 39.7 millimeters in diameter, a 48 millimeter lug length, and a 13.4 millimeter thickness. These are all golden numbers. One of the main deal breakers is this piece arrives with a solid case back. true to the original, but it would have been nice to have seen the 3861 movement. But this was done, I think, largely to decrease its overall thickness, which I think was a gripe that many people had about the first generation FOIS. Everything that the enthusiasts have wanted to see with this watch: flat link bracelet that tapers to the clasp, a micro adjust, an aluminium bezel with a dot over 90, a case that does not have any chamfers on its lugs, true to the original case designs of that period. Something that was only discovered when recreating the Ed White Speedmaster. These watches never had chamfers on their cases. That was something that was done after the fact. Instead of having the incorrect logo, we now have the classic applied Omega logo of the 50s and the 60s. It's a beautiful thing to see. It now arrives with a stepped dial, with faded beige lume that I think will turn quite a few people away, and featured with what they call a CVD-coated grey-blue sunbrush dial. And you can see by these release photos, gracefully given to us by Fratello watches, that in some lights you see it as almost black. In direct light, the blue bursts. Now, for those of us in the know, there was a batch of these Speedmasters with the straight lug cases that were created with this gorgeous grey-blue dial. If memory serves, about 12 of these pieces are known to exist, and they were considered nothing more than prototypes. Now, the brand could have so easily gone down the road of putting a 321 movement in this piece with this gorgeous dial, charging more than the Ed White. But the fact that we are getting this piece as a regular production watch that we can all enjoy, that is not in Canopus Gold, that's not in Platinum, it is exceptional. I am lost for words. But of course the details don't stop there. It has a much larger crown, easier to grip. It's using the gorgeous Alpha style hands, and in a small nod to the first generation, you see that the running seconds has a polished Alpha hand while the actual chronograph minutes and hours are in white. So I take all of this in, and I see this as nearly perfect. The size is Goldilocks, the thickness is spot on. But of course there would be something I would have changed, and that is the running chronograph hand. My absolute favorite choice, the lollipop hand. So the question is, will this piece be as popular as the now famous professional Speedmaster? I don't think so. I think it's a watch that's going to be quite under the radar. Us enthusiasts who know a lot more about these pieces might go after them like mad. This is the chance of getting an Ed White on a budget, in a way, though you aren't getting the 321 movement. All of the specifications around this piece, they are fantastic. For a guy like me, someone who has always obsessed more over the straight lug cases, this is the dream Speedmaster for me, 100%. And that blue dial, I'm going to have to make some irrational decisions about how I'm going to arrive at this watch in the next few years, I think. And if you want my honest recommendation of the Speedmaster to chase, not the white dial, not the standard 3861, not even the Ed White, this is the one you go after. Now look, with all of the praise out of the way, this is not an affordable Speedmaster. This is not like the first generation. It has now doubled in price since when the earlier one debuted. Are you getting double the watch? No. You know, for us pedantics out there, this second generation does everything that we've wanted it to, where the first generation is lacking in a few places. Now, if you are not so interested in the applied logo, or the fact that it's using an older caliber movement, discontinued or not, I am almost certain that the first generation of this watch is going to be selling for a bargain from here on out. What continues to strike me about this piece, and Omega as a company now especially, is that they are seeing that their price hikes have turned a lot of people away, and that they need to now provide more value, better design, better details with their watches for those of us who are willing to spend a great amount of money. A piece like this informs me that their collections are going to change for the better, that the prices might slowly work their way down. And the high level of creativity that we are seeing with a piece like this, beautiful grey-blue dial, will continue to skyrocket. Pun intended. So in closing, the specifications you want to know: 39.7, 48mm lug length with a 13.4mm thickness. From a personal point of view, ignore the statistics and dimensions and details. This is the best variant of the CK2998 I have ever seen, modern or otherwise. And if you need any form of justification, this is my dream Speedmaster, and it now exists. That's all I can say. What are your thoughts on the second generation, first Omega in space? Is it a watch that you'll be looking at more closely? Have I just been gushing over it like a fanboy and have ignored important details? And as always, I am immensely appreciative of you taking the time to watch this video. And I'll see you in the next one.